Numerous diseases caused by fungi, bacteria, viruses, and nematodes affect ornamental landscape plants and lawns. Some are fairly benign in that they may cause unsightly leaf spots, but they will not significantly harm or kill the plant. Others may be very damaging and result in plant death. I'm Dr. DeBusk, and the following section will provide some practical uses of integrated pest management methods, including chemical control as related to ornamental plants. Immunity is the rule in the plant kingdom. Most plants are immune to most pathogens. Therefore, one does not have to worry that the black spot of roses will next appear on a different species of ornamental plant in the landscape. Ornamental plant cultivars generally are not selected based on their resistance to plant pathogens. However, there can be differences in the relative susceptibilities of cultivars to some pathogens, which should be considered when and where appropriate. Antique roses, for example, are generally more tolerant of black spot and other diseases than most of the more recently developed rose hybrids. Natchez is a crepe myrtle cultivar that is commonly used in Florida because of its resistance to powdery mildew. Many cultivars of ornamental plants can be found with some level of resistance to the targeted plant pathogen. Merely choosing and planting these cultivars will reduce disease problems and can be considered as your first line of defense. There are also cultivars that show more tolerance for specific diseases. In spite of the fact that these plants may seem to have as many symptoms as those that are not tolerant, somehow they still thrive and produce. Likewise, plants that are adapted for the local environment are more likely to remain disease-free than non-adapted plants. This is often referred to as selecting the right plant for the site. A plant that prefers well-drained soils will not thrive in a site that is often waterlogged. Plants that prefer low pH soil will not thrive in an alkaline soil. In these situations, the plants are weakened and may develop diseases they would otherwise resist. This is even true for native plants, which are not just native to Florida, but also to a particular environment. Cultural methods can also be used to help manage disease. These include sanitation, plant rotation, host eradication, and improvement to the local environment surrounding the plant or plant grouping. Sanitation practices are cleanliness measures that can reduce unintentional spread of plant pathogens from diseased to healthy plants directly through mechanical transmission or indirectly from pathogen reservoirs. Hands and pruning tools can be readily contaminated when working with diseased plants, especially if the causal agent is bacterial, viral, or present in the vascular system as some wilts. Fusarium wilt of queen palms is a devastating disease that can be transmitted through pruning, thus readily spreading to other queen palms in a nursery or landscape. Routinely sanitize all items that come into contact with plants, soil, or debris. A 10% to 20% solution of household bleach and water makes a good disinfectant for tools and soles of shoes, but is quite corrosive. Examples of commercial disinfectants marketed toward plant production personnel include Consan Triple Action 20, Green Shield, and Physan 20. Always move diseased plants away from healthy plants and either destroy them or treat them in an isolated area. Plant debris and coal piles are excellent reservoirs for plant pathogens and should be kept away from and downwind of healthy plants in production areas. Personnel should disinfect hands, shoes, and tools after handling rogue, diseased, or decaying plant material before resuming regular duties. Many plant pathogens cause disease only on a narrow range of closely related hosts. Continuous cultivation of the same types of plants in an area for long periods of time can result in elevated populations of pathogens and other pests in the soil. Periodic rotation of plants that are susceptible to different pathogens may decrease populations of harmful organisms and reduce the incidence of these problems. Pest outbreaks tend to spread quickly within monoculture systems. When appropriate, use plants of many different families and species, or at least use different cultivars. Plant diversity decreases damage from pathogens and pests that attack specific kinds of plants. Sometimes the best approach is to thoroughly remove all plants that might be possible pathogen hosts. For instance, the weeds surrounding a landscape may be host plants and should be eradicated. Another example can be found among certain plant species, especially trees and palms, for which there are no known resistant varieties to a particular disease and no known controls. If that plant species dies from a particular disease, the best recommendation is to avoid planting the same species in its former location. Most fungi and bacteria that cause leaf diseases require free water or very high humidity in order to infect the host tissue and initiate disease. Therefore, water management is an important disease management tool. Hand watering is preferable because it can be restricted to the soil around the roots of plants and not the foliage. It is also important to water after dew has formed, but early enough to allow for fairly rapid drying of the irrigation water. The early morning hours are a good choice for watering. Water requirements vary for each plant species and each season. This means your watering schedule will change throughout the year. Often, the dry season of Florida coincides with the coolest time of the year and when most ornamental plants are not actively growing and do not require as much water. Reduce the need to irrigate the entire landscape by grouping plants that have the same water requirements. Put the plants that need the most water in one place and those that are drought tolerant in another place. Be sure to schedule your irrigation system or hand watering accordingly. While water management is one way to improve the localized environment to minimize disease development, other cultural methods should be used in the landscape. Knowing the proper time to plant and the proper depth to place seeds, seedlings, plants, or trees is important. Poorly drained soil should be avoided. If possible, consider raised beds to ensure good drainage. For annual ornamental gardens, fertilizer should only be applied after the soil has been tested to determine which nutrients are deficient. For perennial ornamental beds, palms, and fruit trees, use appropriate slow-release fertilizers and monitor for nutrient deficiencies based on the symptoms and leaf tissue analysis. Knowing the site's disease history can help with planting decisions. Wider plant spacing provides for good air movement and promotes more rapid drying after rains or irrigation. Plant injuries provide access for pathogens, so care should be taken with plants and plant parts during production and distribution. Plants will do better in looser soil. Mulching can also keep weeds down, retain moisture, and prevent foliage and fruit from touching plant pathogen-infested soil. Soil solarization is an option for managing soil-borne pests in production systems and sunny landscape settings during periods of little cloud cover and rain. This technique uses clear plastic to trap the radiant energy of the sun, which heats the soil to temperatures sufficient to destroy many plant pathogens and other pests without completely eliminating beneficial organisms. The plastic should be kept on for at least 4 to 6 weeks. Soil solarization is often used when producing high-quality bedding plants, such as cut flowers. Seeds, bulbs, tubers, and cuttings can be immersed in hot water to kill potential pests, including pathogens. Daffodil and Easter lily bulbs are commonly treated with hot water to kill any nematodes that may be present. Accurate time and temperature controls must be in place for the hot water treatment to be successful. The temperature for pathogen inactivation must not exceed the critical damage threshold for the propagated material being disinfested. Biological control is the use of beneficial microorganisms to suppress soil-borne and foliar plant pathogens. Products containing bacteria such as Bacillus, Pseudomonas, and Streptomyces, and fungi such as Gliocladium and Trichoderma have reduced a variety of fungal plant pathogens in various experiments, especially when incorporated into transplant media or used as seed treatments. Products containing biological control agents that are currently available for disease management for ornamentals are listed in UF-IFAS EDIS publication PP 202, Professional Disease Management Guide for Ornamental Plants, available at the address shown here. Ongoing research at universities and federal facilities continues to evaluate and develop new biocontrols as well as expand the labeling of existing products. The use of organic soil amendments may enhance populations of beneficial microorganisms already present in the soil. Biological control techniques are environmentally friendly IPM tools with great potential, but currently biological controls do not adequately control ornamental plant diseases on their own in most cases. Regardless of what other IPM strategies are used, it is sometimes necessary to apply pesticides to manage plant diseases. Pesticide applications should be based on scouting reports and the presence of environmental conditions conducive to disease development in established planting systems. Avoid using routine calendar sprays, which can be wasteful and impact populations of beneficial organisms. Fungicides are pesticides that kill fungi or stop the spread of fungi to other plants. A fungicide's activity refers to its mobility in the plant and should be considered when choosing a product. Systemic fungicides usually move upward within a plant, though there are a few that also move downward. They may be applied as foliar sprays, seed treatments, root dips, soil drenches, or tree injections. Locally, systemic fungicides have limited mobility in the direct vicinity of application. Almost all systemic fungicides disrupt only one or a few steps in fungal metabolism. Therefore, resistance to these chemicals usually occurs within a few years if used frequently. It is best to use these products in combination or rotation with broad-spectrum contact fungicides to delay development of resistance. Advantages of using systemic fungicides include longer residual activity and survival of possible beneficial organisms on the plant surface. Fungicides may have protective or preventative, curative, or eradicant activity. Most fungicides and bactericides are protectants and must be present on or in the plant in advance of the pathogen in order to prevent infection. These chemicals may be applied when environmental conditions are conducive to a disease outbreak. Products with curative activity may be applied after infection but prior to severe disease symptoms. Some chemicals have both protective and curative activity that may depend on the rate of application. Resistance to many contact fungicides is slow to develop or non-existent because many different metabolic pathways of target organisms are disrupted. Refer to UF IFAS publication PP202, Professional Disease Management Guide for Ornamental Plants for chemical control options. Besides resistance issues mentioned above, several factors determine how well fungicides work. Coverage. Insufficient coverage is one of the most common reasons for fungicide failure. Application time. Enough of the fungicide should be in or on the plant before or during the time the fungus infects the plant. Life stages. How often you apply fungicides depends on the type of fungus. If the fungus is short-lived, it may infect a plant several times, which would require repeated fungicide applications. Rate of plant growth. As new leaves grow, you may have to apply fungicides repeatedly to protect the new growth. Weather. If the weather is not suitable for fungal growth, you may not have to apply a fungicide. At other times, rain might wash off the fungicide, requiring a repeat application. If the fungicide breaks down quickly, you may have to apply the chemical more frequently. Phytotoxic effects may occur if applied under extremely hot or dry conditions. In this video, hopefully you learned more about the types of control techniques you can do for disease management in ornamental plants. Trying to prevent the disease or using appropriate cultural practices should be your first step.